This is Chick2Chick Uncut, raw and unfiltered.
The title of this podcast is I'm Watching My Son Die from a Heroin Addiction. And although that might sound alarming to you, this is something that my guest has said many times. For years, she's been struggling with her son who's dependent on drugs. And really, she is not alone. Families all across America are struggling with the same thing. Every year, more than 100,000 Americans die from a drug overdose. And what's so sad is that oftentimes these addictions start in a very innocent way. My guest today is Kelly Brent. Kelly is a friend of mine, and her son is addicted to heroin. Kelly, thanks for coming on the podcast. Now, I want to be very clear from the start of this. You have discussed this with your son, and he is okay with you coming on this podcast. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he's had no problems with it, and he understands why you want to do this podcast.
Well, I think it's necessary for people to start speaking out when they've had this come into their family. And if not me, then who will do it? So he's very just very practical about it. And he loves me unconditionally. I love him unconditionally. So we trust each other, and I wouldn't do anything to hurt him or say anything to hurt him. So
before we get into the nitty gritty of this, tell us about yourself. Tell us about yourself, what you do, and just on a personal level, you're married, how many kids you have, etc.
Well, thank you. I grew up in Lock Haven, Pennsylvania. It was a great experience. I'm very close to my high school classmates. We're all deep friends. And I got married and moved to the Harrisburg area for my husband's job at the time. It's my son's father. Mm-hmm. And I have built a business over my lifetime, and it is a transcription and translation service. I am a federal contractor, so our clients really are not so much located in Pennsylvania anymore. They're mostly California, Texas. So I do a lot of law enforcement, and so that's been my career for 38 years. And I remarried in 2010. I have two sons, and one, the oldest, has fallen into this problem, but he is a graduate from Penn State, and he was a double major and on the dean's list. He has a lot of intellectual horsepower. And then I have a younger son who's 2 years younger than that. And he he went to hack. He was unhappy, and he enlisted in the Army on me. And so he got through the Army, and using the post 9/11 GI Bill, he put himself through college at the University of New Hampshire. And he is a chemical engineer and lives in Maine and has a new baby.
All right.
I have also two grandchildren to my oldest. And that's a little bit about me. I remarried in 2010. My husband and I live in Lewisberry. And it's otherwise I'll say a quiet life, but it's very busy. I keep myself busy.
Okay. So let's get right to this. What happened with your son, your eldest son?
In 2013, he was in a car accident in Harrisburg. And it totaled his car. But in my opinion, he did not necessarily need the medication he was prescribed at that time. He was prescribed Vicodin, and the addiction began from that point.
In what way? So he went on the Vicodin, I'm assuming because he was in pain after the accident. What happened? Like, how did this spiral that it got out of control?
Well, they say you're addicted before you know you're an addict. And so he was placed on Vicodin. I think he was given 90 pills with 3 refills. And he had no broken bones. He had no sprain. He had some bruises on his elbow. But in no way, looking back, should he have been given any pain medication for the injuries that he suffered at that time.
And how old was he at that point?
He was in his early 20s, like I think 23, 24.
Yeah. So he's on it. You get this refilled. And then what happened after that?
Well, at that time, he was working for Microsoft. Though his degree is in economics and energy business and finance, he actually is quite the computer guru, and he was working for Microsoft. And so he was living in an apartment that he was paying for. He was tracking beautifully. So he had his own apartment. So I didn't see this develop up close and personally. He lived in Camp Hill. I live in Lewisberry. And what has happened over the short course of time is he was just refilling the prescription, using the prescription. And at that time, he went through a very difficult breakup with his long-term girlfriend. And he started kind of numbing that pain with the prescriptions he got from the accident. And one thing must have led to another, as all addictions do. And he needed some help at his apartment to do a couple of things. And I went over, and his apartment was a mess. And I couldn't reconcile what I was seeing with the person, with the way he was raised, and, you know, the person I know he can be. And I just really didn't know what was wrong. But go ahead.
How many years was this after the accident? You said you went over and that his apartment was in disarray. Was this a year, 2 years after the accident?
I would say about 1.5 to 2 years, if I had to say. And you just, and you're looking at him, and his eyes are a little bit weird. I wouldn't say glassy, just overly excited, and kind of, there was a paranoia in him that there was no reason for him to be paranoid. He was working, he had an apartment, and he was in a great place.
Did you confront him and say, what's going on here? I mean, this isn't my son. What did you say to him?
Well, I realized he had a problem, and there was no visible evidence of any injections. So we got to the bottom of that, and he said that he was just buying pills off the street. Well, that's really expensive. And even if you're working for Microsoft, that's expensive. And eventually his habit became greater than his income. And then the crime starts. And he also was... he did some security at a bank, if you can imagine, before So I started to see my bank account for my business drain in levels that were shocking. It was thousands and thousands of dollars that were just completely falling out of my bank account. And my husband and I were on vacation, and my vice president called me to say, hey, there's something going on with our balance. So when we came back, I addressed it, and at that point, he had syringe marks in his arms.
How did he make that transition? You said he was on Vicodin. What happened that he went from Vicodin and now heroin? How did that happen?
That happens because of money. Pills are much more expensive than heroin. Both are opioids. And when you become addicted, even someone who's petrified of needles, as my son is or was, I was in utter catastrophic shock. I remember falling to my knees and screaming when I saw the marks in his arms, because I saw him die. Like in that moment, that is the end. You know, if you get to heroin, you are at the end. And but he volunteered to go into rehab, so there was hope. So we had that. I did not press charges for the amount of money that was taken. I had the authority to do so, but that would have wrecked his life. But obviously more to come, right? So
much more. And as moms, you know, we want to protect our kids. Yes. And even though we see that they're doing something like that, like you said, he drained your bank account, who wants to press charges? And plus, you said he went to rehab. So
yes,
what happened after that?
So he volunteered to go to rehab. I want to give a wonderful shout out to Cumberland County, because they did provide services for him to go to rehab, and Cumberland County did pay for it. It's $30,000 a month, if you can imagine. And that's over 10 years ago. So I don't know what it is now.
Oh, my.
But they sent him to a rehab. It was obviously out of town. These rehabs tend to be in smaller, more rural locations, like a cabin in the woods or something like that, where they're isolated from the normal community. And then they get 3 meals a day and a cot. They have to attend meetings, and they have to do some form of physical exercise, even in some small way. And they attend a lot of prayer groups. So there are attempts at recovery, and he was clean for the 30 days while he was there, and probably maybe for 30 days after that.
And then what happened?
Then he relapsed, and his relapse was hard. So I gave him a place to live, which was at that time in one of my home offices. But that turned out to be a mistake. So he got worse and worse. And then he engaged in petty theft, whether it was stealing from the grocery store, just food to exist on. When you're a parent and you're living it so closely because it's right in your hometown, many things that go wrong, you're thinking to yourself, don't enable them. Don't help them. Well, what does enabling look like? Keeping them alive? Do you feed them? Like, what does it look like? So it just starts the petty theft. And then the heroin being an opioid, it makes you sleepy. So he would be found by the police sleeping in his car in a random parking lot or in a parking space. Maybe a child saw it, told their parents that there's a dead man, whatever the case. But then in his car, when they pick him up, there will be some sort of paraphernalia. So now he's taken to jail, which he can't really afford, on a small charge. And then he sits in jail for 30 days or 2 months or whatever that looks like.
So he has been to prison then? Oh,
yes. He's been in prison probably 3 or 4 years all total.
3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm. I haven't added it up until just this moment. It could be 2, but it feels like a lot.
You know, and as a mom, again, we want to protect our kids. And I know you're dying inside. You're just dying inside because when you see your child hurting, we take on that pain and we're hurting even more and we want to fix things. Did you feel like, I got to fix this? I got to do something here?
Yes. We enlisted the help of friends and family. When my son came home from the Army before he went to college, he had my son live with him. And being now a big, strong, strapping young man that he was, he really felt like he could help. And he wasn't able to help. So there was an intervention of sorts. And we put him back into rehab. And there was nothing that was really working long term. And you want to help.
Yes.
But you're listening to society say, don't enable. So, but you can't find that line. It's so murky. We don't want to enable them. We don't want to give them any money, but they might be starving and on the street. He's a human being and he's my son. So to the extent that I can help him at least be off the street, that's something. But the money that I allow him to spend because he's not paying his rent could be seen as enabling, and I see that myself. So you are trying to protect them from themselves. And at this point in this road, at this point I was trying to just ensure somehow that he didn't kill himself.
And trying to keep him alive.
Right.
You're trying to keep your son alive. I mean,
yes.
that's dire. And I know they say you can't enable, and I get that. And but this is different. You're trying to keep your son alive. But I also know at some point you got to go, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. And like, did you get to that point where you said, I can't bail you out of prison anymore. I can't send you to rehab anymore. I got to walk away from this. Did you get to that point?
I've been there multiple times, really. There was something he said to me one time. He was helping me do some yard work. And I knew that he was in some way using. And but I was making him do some work for me in order to get money for food. So I felt like that was a reasonable exchange. And he said to me, you know, I think I'm going to rob a bank. Oh. And I actually just kind of blurted out, I kind of like laughed at him, like, what a ridiculous thing to say. And I remember saying, go ahead. I want you to know that will wreck your life. But by all means, use your judgment. I was so angry at him for even saying it. I was angry at him for letting me know that. I was angry at everything and the monster that is addiction. It's a monster, and it's coming for your kids. And not only is it coming for your kids, but it will come for the family, and it will wipe out everything. So he told me he was going to do this, and a week later, indeed, he robbed a bank. And I'm of course, second, third, fourth guessing, what could I have said differently? I can't relive it. I can't go back. Was my incredulity so great that he didn't take seriously what I said? But it's been 13 years of this, so.
Okay, so where do we stand with him right now? You just said 13 years of this. Where is he now? Where are we now?
He is currently living in a building, and he is getting ready to move out. He will probably be moved out by the end of February. And that is a building that I, in part, own. And I will be selling that building to make sure that I am eliminated from the possibility of him returning to that building. He would not be allowed to live with me. He also would not be allowed to live with his father. He has a girlfriend, and I think that they will be living together with her. The wheels are in motion to make that transition, and I am helping make that transition because what's good for me is ultimately good for him. So,
is he working?
He is not working. He does odd jobs for me, and his talent is, he's really so great at what he does. And so he does do some odd things here and there for me, and I pay him per task. I don't pay him a paycheck because it would vary so much from time to time.
And I'm assuming he's still using heroin.
I've had a really deep conversation with him this week, and I don't think he is. So something has changed. But I've thought this before, right? He is in a methadone program. And so he uses methadone. Methadone is also an opioid. And methadone and heroin, it's my understanding that they're the same family of drug. They're both opioids. I've hoped before, I will forever hope until the inevitable happens, whatever that looks like. But he probably, I know he's using some form of opioid.
Kelly, I recently saw your son.
Yes.
And I didn't say anything to you that day, but I was shocked. This is a young man in his 30s. His face was sunken in, had lost all of his teeth, what they call meth mouth.
Yes.
And I tried to maintain my composure for you that day. I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked and heartbroken for you.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Because I know when things happen, and look at, I know every family on this earth is struggling with something, and we've all had struggles with kids. I've had struggles with my own son, and every time something happens, I feel like we blame ourselves, and we think, what could I have done differently? Have you blamed yourself for his addiction? Did you say, oh my God, what did I do? This is my fault.
Yes and no. So in spite of everything that's happened with my son, and obviously he's out of jail now, and he's on probation. In spite of everything that's happened, he's actually a really sweet and kind soul, and he is a brilliant person to talk to. He's provided so much insight to me as a mom, and he has really enabled me to be completely off the hook. He told me how it started, where things started to go wrong, where the vulnerabilities began, and it has absolutely nothing to do with me. And he has reassured me of that throughout this 13 years. And I know that to be true because, looking back, I was the mom who stayed home with the kids.
Yeah.
And I was the mom who, in some ways, judged other families that did not look like mine because I was making the sacrifice to stay home with my kids. And when all the other kids got home from school and the doors were locked and they were hungry, they came to my house. And I was so proud to be that mom. But when you find out in the most horrific way that your son has robbed a bank and it's all over everything and your friends are sharing it on Facebook and they're not associating my last name with his last name and they're gleeful, like, hey, look at this guy, they're smug and gleeful and I think not thinking, really thoughtless. But when that happens, you are so stripped of your pride, and it's an impossible feeling to describe, but only until you're stripped of your pride can you share the word as I am sharing with you. He is hopefully getting better, but I am prepared that he won't. I have set aside a tote of my favorite pictures of him from when he was born to when he was in school with braces on those beautiful teeth of his. I have his Scholastic Awards. I have his Dean's List certification. I have his Penn State graduation certificate, and I have everything framed. And I'm very proud of. I'm proud of where he was going, and I'm sorry that he was derailed. But I have to deal with the consequences of any outcome in order for me to feel some control. I am not responsible for his addiction, and I know that. But there were forks in the road that I may not have taken the right road, but I didn't know that at the time. And I'm a lot more grounded individual now, and I'm also a realist. I have to, in order to take control of the way that I'm feeling, I have to be prepared for any eventuality.
What are you preparing for? What are you preparing for that you said you got all of these things together?
A call from the coroner.
You're convinced he's going to die?
Most of the time.
I mean, you and I talked about this, and the name of this podcast is I'm Watching My Son Die from a Heroin Addiction, because you're convinced that this is going to happen.
I am convinced enough to be prepared. And it won't solve anything, being prepared, but it will be one less horrific task that I have to do should I get that call. And I know how deeply he's gone into it. And there's a creeping. What happens in the mind of a heroin addict is there's a creeping hopelessness. And that hopelessness for any normal life takes away their desire to move forward. And a lot of young people are killing themselves with an overdose. So it looks like an overdose, but that overdose is a suicide.
Do you think he recognizes what's happened to him? Do you think he realizes the problem that he has? Do you think he recognizes how this has affected you?
I don't think he can recognize how it affects me because he sees what he sees from his point of view, right? So he sees me at like an elevated space from his space, which is very low right now, and maybe for a very long time. So I don't think he can bridge the gap between where I am and the hope he had for his life once upon a time to get to that place of, hard work, success, those kinds of things. I think he's so stripped of any hope at all. He cannot get hired for a job because he's a felon. But he gets fined because he hasn't paid his fines. So as a parent, I'm put in a place where, should I pay the fine so that he can get out of the loop? But I've done that. And to pay the fine, it just elongates the loop, right? It'll still be a loop.
It's a vicious cycle. It doesn't end.
Yeah,
it doesn't end.
Addicts, when they get to a certain point, they are trapped in a construct where they are removed from society. We don't see that, but they're put inside a bubble, and they're not allowed in. They're not allowed to get a job. They have to pay fines they can't pay. Yeah. And then the magisterial justices put warrants out for their arrest.
Yeah.
And then the police come knocking at a door, and they get taken away in handcuffs. And you have to watch it because in my case, I live near him. And so they take him away. And then I'm stuck with, he's going to have his children on X day. I always have supervised visitation with the kids. But for the sake of the grandchildren, I am fighting for his life as well. So there is a point where you feel like it's out of your hands because you want him to be totally responsible.
Yeah.
He's going to end up back in jail. His children will then have that attached to them, that stigma for the sins of the father and the terrible, grotesque things that people say. And I'm trying to protect my grandchildren now. And
how old are they?
6. They're twins.
They're 6. 6-year. And
they're first grade.
You've brought this up several times. This shows up in the newspaper and people know about it. And have people turned their backs on you and said, hey, I don't want anything to do with this? Have you lost friends over this? Have you lost family? How has this impacted your social circle?
I have lost a few friends, which I was, in hindsight, super glad to lose. So, sometimes
the weeding,
God gives
right?
with one hand and takes away with the other, right?
Yeah.
And the only family that I've lost would have been a couple of cousins. And they're my old mindset, right? You grind on your kids, you turn them into doctors, you let them loose, and then you brag about it for the rest of your life, right? This has really, it's knocked me down quite a bit. So I have a couple adjacent family members, but certainly my immediate family, never, ever. And my mother, before she passed away, and my father, before he passed away, you never leave your kids, Kelly Joe. You never leave your kids. Kelly Joe, you do right by that boy. Kelly Joe, he's still your son. Kelly
is.
Joe. Yes.
He is.
And they would remind me when I went into a dark place, Kelly Joe, he's still your son. You need to come up and visit him. Okay, Mom, I'm on my way. And so you have to, schedule the visits for the jail, and you're only allowed to go every so often. And so it's sort of very much been in my family. And
this is not the life. I mean, who envisions this life for their child? We always want our kids to have a better life than us.
Right.
Kelly, how has this affected you? We've talked so much about your son, and we've talked about other people. I want to know about you and how you're doing, and how this has just broken your heart over and over again, and how you've pulled yourself out of it to the place where you sound just very pragmatic and like, this is the way it is, and this is what I'm dealing with.
Right. There's been a lot of counseling for me alone and then with my son. So that has been helpful, but that only gives you a moment, the counseling. I think it's something that I've finally grown, I don't want to say above or below, but I've grown outside of it. I'm now kind of looking at it as a problem in an abstract instead of being immersed in it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make decisions that are practical in the long term versus the short term of today. And I accept what God has given me. I accept it. And I will do my best to help the children, that it changed everything for me. So though he may or may not be doing well, I still have to ensure that the kids are doing well. I have to make sure that they have nice clothing. So I take care of a lot of things on behalf of the children.
And how many times did you fall to your knees in tears? How many times did you cry yourself to sleep? How many times?
I couldn't count them. I will tell you that sleep is no reprieve from addiction. And this is something I really don't speak about much. And I know that I haven't spoken about it with you because I don't speak about it much. But in your dreams is the worst thing. In your dreams, you find him in a corner of a crack house, and he's blue and he's black, and the house is on fire. In your dreams, you see things that make any reality a terrible, terrible nightmare. He dies in my dreams in many iterations. Most of it, though, is in what they call a flop house, which is where addicts hang out, that there's nobody living there, and it's, that kind of thing. But you see many iterations of death. You see him beaten and bludgeoned. You see him with needles hanging out of his arms. So there's no reprieve in sleep. So I simply pray before I go to sleep. And some nights more lately, it doesn't come to me that way. But there is no escape from it.
It's there.
Lot. Yeah, it's there, and you may try to bury it, but it is going to come out in your sleep.
You go to sleep and it's there, and you wake up and it's there.
And it's there.
And I got to ask you, Kelly, I know you're remarried, and I know your husband, and this isn't his son. It's not his biological son.
No.
What impact has this had on your marriage?
Overwhelming.
Yeah.
Really overwhelming. But,
Overwhelming in what ways? I mean, you could take that so many ways. Well, it's overwhelming. How so?
The lack of compassion for me as a mother, he has no kids, and so he doesn't understand what it feels like to be a parent, and to experience that unconditional love where you may be angry. And certainly my son and my husband have really had it out in ways that I thought was really unrecoverable. And I don't know that it is recoverable, but we are moving forward one day at a time. And everything has been a lot more calm lately. I'm not sure if it's preparing me for something or whether things are getting better, but certainly my husband has learned a lot of lessons about how to treat me, because I'm not the addict. I barely drink, as you well know.
Yes.
He wasn't raised in addiction, and therefore this is really not my fault. So we've had a lot of difficulty through it, but I think we're coming out the other side. And I pray every day. I just pray every day for peace, and I try to find the things where I can have some quiet.
So where do you go from here with your son? What do you do?
Well, I'm going to reach out again to Cumberland County, which is where he lives, and see if there are any other services that he can be offered. I'm going to be reaching out. I think it's been an unusual week. I don't know whether it was us discussing this podcast, but something is a little bit different. You can never really put your finger on what it is, but something's different. And it seems like he's different. I woke up this morning to a long email from him. He sent it to myself and his father. And it was very heartfelt. It was incredibly full of despair and anguish, which again puts them at risk of an overdose in the form of a suicide, right? It looks like one thing, but it's really another, or rather in the form of an overdose, but it's really a suicide. So I think that our discussion about this podcast has really made him do some reflection. So I'm not really sure what the next steps are, other than to do a little bit of digging, talk to some people, and he needs some form of teeth. because his diet now consists of like applesauce and Reese's cups and things that he cannot, he's not able to chew anymore. So we're looking into a program where he can at least get some dentures in the short term. He needs to find a job. So, and he's worth employing, but the felony makes him look like a dangerous person. He's not a dangerous person. He's very kind and sweet and passive. So I think next steps are, I would like to do some sort of surge of help, but only because I believe this podcast has made him reflect a little bit. But you never know what the next steps are. It could be a step in the right direction. It could be the wrong direction.
Well, I hope that it helps. And as we pointed out in the beginning, you and I talked long and hard about this, and I was very clear to you that I did not want to do this if it caused any harm. And I wanted you to speak with him, and he was fine. And a lot of people might be listening right now and thinking, why is she doing this? Why is she talking about these deep, dark, ugly secrets in her life? And I would love for you to explain why you felt the need to do this podcast.
Well, the deep, dark, ugly secrets allow this thing to breathe. Mm-hmm. He went to jail. It was in the paper. He has warrants out for his arrest for non-payment of fines, which he has no money to pay the fines. And I'm not going to give him the money to enable him. So he has to get a job, and we've had these conversations, but they're not, I think this kind of secret hurts our society at large.
I agree.
And there are parents that are starting to wonder what's going on with their kids. And there are much more dangerous drugs in the pipeline coming. The next generation of a really bad drug is here. Right. So you see the things that are happening in Philadelphia. You hear about the fentanyl overdoses. That's coming for the kids. And I would like to share a message with parents.
Yes, please.
Yes. Drugs are here, and telling your children don't do drugs, and modeling good behavior and not being an addict yourself, and raising your children in a solid home, in a nuclear family, will not save your child. And you have to explain why not. So it's not good enough to say, well, drugs are bad for you. Because when they do a tiny recreational thing at a party in college, they love it. And they're like, well, our parents have been lying to us. And so if the parents are lying, how good are these other things? That in and of itself is a mindset that we need to shut down. And as parents, you need to show them the end of the road and tell them that this is where this is going. There is no other out for you if you go down this road. And you are addicted before you know you're an addict. And so every single story that you can tell them or show them or explain to them about the receptor that accepts this opioid and needs this opioid in the future, don't open that receptor. Don't let that door open. And don't be nice about it. Don't be mean about it. But I think there are better resources out there than don't do drugs, because that doesn't say why. And they're going to be out in the world exploring these things. I know so many young people who have died in terrible ways, best friends of my boys. And those parents are suffering. I know parents who have lost every child, and they're on their way to losing the next child. I know families in our region that have lost 3 children out of 3, 2 out of 2. And they're on their way to 2 out of 2 and 3 out of 3. They're on that path. And I don't just understand, you need to understand the end result of addiction and really explain to them where their life will go if they even try it.
And they have to understand, too, you cannot be naive and say, this is not going to happen to my child, because it happened to your child, and it could happen to any child. And I think that ultimately, you really wanted to do this to help other people. And in some ways, Kelly, is this helping you to heal, to talk about it? Is it helping you? No?
I don't think so.
No.
I talk about it. I pray about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I talk about it every day in my prayers. I talk about it with my sisters, I have a sister who's an RN, and she had addiction come into her family with her first husband. And it burned their house in a meth lab in the basement when she had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And so I have folks that I can talk to about it. I am really here to expose that I am not afraid of this anymore. And I am not afraid of what society has to say about it anymore. And as you know, I had a bit of a public life there for a while. And I am completely armored up and so unafraid of what those folks could ever do to me that it took away a lot of their power. And I empower myself by being honest and being brave. And only that will help the system start to understand what's really going on. There's a lot wrong with society, and they're locking these people out. And these are the folks who are dying. And they're just not looking at it the right way. If you look at it as a sickness, which it is, because once the brain is affected, it becomes a sickness. I always said sickness is different than addiction. Sickness is cancer. Addiction is, you can fix that.
No.
But right. So I'm just here to sort of enlighten, if I can, help anybody that I can. And it's just time for me to take what I've learned the worst possible way and share it to see if it can help anybody else, because I was really alone. People don't talk about it. People are very ashamed of it. But mine has become so public that running from it is the monster for me. So now I just turned around and faced it and do what I can to help while I can.
And you're taking that monster head on. Mm-hmm. Kelly, I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast and trusting me to tell your story and to tell your son's story, all in the hopes of one thing, of helping other families. So I thank you, and I'm going to pray for your son. And I'm going to pray that that maybe doing this podcast is going to wake him up and maybe change. I will pray. And I thank you.
Flora. Thank you.
Thank you. It was unbelievable, Kelly's story. And as I said to her, I'm so grateful that she trusted me to tell her story and to be so transparent and honest about what's happening in her family, because if it can happen to her family, it can happen to any family. And I think parents, we need to open up our eyes. You cannot be naive. You cannot say, oh, this isn't going to happen to me, because it can. And remember, Kelly's son's addiction happened in such an innocent way. He was prescribed a painkiller because of an accident, and now it's turned into a monster. So I hope that everyone takes her story to heart and have that conversation with your child. Thanks so much for listening and tuning into the podcast today. As always, do me a favor, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Chick2Chick USA. That way, every time we come out with a new podcast episode, you will get an alert on your phone. So thanks again for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll be back soon with a new podcast episode.